Here's the first section of your story. I always believed that trust was the foundation of any relationship. For 16 years, I thought I had built an unshakable life with my wife, Claire. We had a beautiful home, a teenage daughter, and a love story that had weathered life storms. At least, that's what I thought. Looking back, I should have noticed the cracks forming long before everything crumbled. It started with little things, missed dinners, sudden overtime at work, and the way she started guarding her phone like it held state secrets. At first, I dismissed it. Claire was a dedicated woman. Maybe she was just overwhelmed. But deep down, a gnawing feeling grew inside me. I tried to brush it off, convincing myself that it was paranoia. After all, we had been through so much together. Why would she throw it all away? Then there was Nathan. My best friend since college, the man who stood beside me at my wedding, my daughter's godfather. He was always around, always joking, always part of our lives. I trusted him with everything. But in hindsight, I see how blind I was. One evening, Claire came home late again, her hair slightly disheveled, her lipstick smudged. I tried to ignore it, but my heart pounded. She gave me a tired smile, brushing past me with a dismissive, "Long day at work." That night, as she showered, I picked up her phone. It was locked. That was new. Doubt turned into obsession. I started noticing the way she smiled at her texts, how she suddenly cared more about her appearance, and how often Nathan just happened to drop by when I wasn't home. A dark thought crept into my mind, one I didn't want to entertain. I needed proof. One weekend, when Claire told me she was working late again, I followed her. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I trailed her car, my stomach twisting into knots. She wasn't heading to the office. She was going to a hotel. I watched from my car as she stepped inside. Minutes later, Nathan arrived. Any lingering hope I had shattered in that moment. My best friend. My wife. Betrayal hit me like a freight train. I couldn't breathe. I didn't confront them that night. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing. When she came home hours later, she kissed my cheek and acted like everything was normal. The next day, I hired a private investigator. I needed undeniable proof, something I could throw in their faces when I finally decided to destroy their little fantasy. 2 weeks later, I had everything: photos, messages, receipts. But the worst part was yet to come. When I confronted Claire, she didn't deny it. She looked at me with an expression I'll never forget. Not guilt, not remorse, but defiance. "I love him, Daniel," she said, her voice cold. "I haven't been happy in years. I just didn't know how to tell you." I stood there, my fists clenched, my heart in pieces. "And our family? Our daughter?" "She understands," Claire said, looking away. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean she understands?" "She knows," Claire admitted, almost casually. "And she's okay with it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My daughter, Emma, my little girl, knew about this? She had known, and she hadn't said anything? When I turned to Emma, hoping, praying, that this was some mistake, she wouldn't even look me in the eyes. "Mom deserves to be happy," she muttered. "You don't own her." I had never felt so utterly destroyed. The divorce was quick. Claire and Nathan didn't even try to fight for anything. Claire got the house. Emma chose to stay with her mother. I packed a bag and walked away, leaving behind a life I thought was mine. I lost my wife. I lost my best friend. And worst of all, I lost my daughter. Here's the second section of your story. Starting over was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I moved into a small apartment across town, far from the home I once shared with Claire and Emma. The silence was suffocating. I had spent years being a husband and a father, building a life around my family. Now, I was just a man with a broken past, left with nothing but the ghosts of what once was. Claire and Nathan wasted no time flaunting their new relationship. They moved in together barely a month after the divorce was finalized. From what I heard through mutual friends, they were acting like high school sweethearts, posting pictures on social media, going on vacations, and pretending that they hadn't just burned an entire family to the ground. But the part that cut the deepest? Emma had fully embraced their new life. She stopped answering my calls. At first, I thought she just needed time. I told myself that she was a teenager, that she didn't understand the full weight of what had happened. But when I reached out again and again, only to be met with silence, I realized the truth. She had chosen them. One day, I showed up at the house, hoping to see her. I knocked, and when the door opened, it was Nathan standing there, his expression smug. "You shouldn't be here, Dan," he said, leaning against the doorframe like he owned the place. "I want to see my daughter." "She doesn't want to see you," he said flatly. I clenched my fists. "That's for her to tell me." Nathan let out a slow sigh and called over his shoulder. "Emma, your dad's here." I heard footsteps. Then Emma appeared at the door, her arms crossed, looking more annoyed than anything else. "What do you want?" she asked. The coldness in her voice nearly broke me. I tried to reach for the daughter I had raised, the girl who used to run into my arms when I came home from work, the child I had once rocked to sleep. But she wasn't there anymore. "I just wanted to see how you were doing," I said, my voice barely steady. She shrugged. "I'm fine. I don't see why you keep showing up. Mom's happy now. I don't know why you're so bitter about it." Bitter. That was the word she used. I wanted to scream that her mother had lied, cheated, and destroyed everything we had built. I wanted to tell her that Nathan wasn't the hero she thought he was, that he was a snake who had betrayed me in the worst possible way. But I knew it wouldn't matter. She had already chosen her side. So I did the only thing I could. I walked away. After that, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I focused on my work, spent time at the gym, and tried to create some sense of normalcy. It was hard, but eventually I stopped checking their social media, stopped torturing myself with what they were doing. I accepted that Emma wouldn't be coming back anytime soon. Then, almost a year after the divorce, the cracks started to show. A mutual friend mentioned that Claire and Nathan weren't as happy as they pretended to be. The perfect image they had been trying to sell was starting to fall apart. Claire had quit her job, expecting Nathan to take care of everything. But Nathan, who had never been the responsible type, wasn't handling it well. Bills started piling up. Arguments became more frequent. And Nathan? He was no longer the charming best friend who had saved Claire from a supposedly unhappy marriage. He was showing his true colors, the selfish, unreliable man I had always suspected he was underneath the act. Emma was beginning to see it, too. One evening, out of nowhere, she sent me a text. It was short, just 3 words. "Hey, can we talk?" For the first time in a long while, I felt hope, but I had no idea what was coming next. Here's the 3rd section of your story. I stared at my phone, reading Emma's message over and over again. It had been nearly a year since she had spoken to me, since she had made it painfully clear that she had chosen her mother and Nathan over me. But now, here she was reaching out. I hesitated before replying. A part of me wanted to ignore it, to let her sit in the bed she had made. But that wasn't who I was. No matter what had happened, she was still my daughter. Of course. When and where? She responded almost immediately, suggesting we meet at a small cafe downtown. When I arrived, I spotted her sitting at a corner table, stirring a drink absent-mindedly. She looked up as I approached, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the little girl I had raised, the one who used to run to me when she was scared, who used to call me Daddy instead of Dad. But she was different now. She looked tired. "Hey," I said, sitting across from her. "Hey," she mumbled. She wouldn't meet my eyes. There was an awkward silence between us, one I didn't know how to break. Finally, she spoke. "I think I made a mistake." I leaned forward, my heart pounding. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath, as if she was struggling to find the right words. "Nathan isn't who I thought he was," she admitted. "At first, everything seemed fine. He was nice to me. He treated Mom well. But things changed." I stayed quiet, letting her talk. "They started fighting all the time," she continued. "Mom stopped working because she thought Nathan would take care of her, but he's irresponsible. He's always out drinking, always making excuses about money. And when she tries to talk to him about it, he just blows up, yells at her, at me." A sharp pang of anger flared in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. He yells at you? She nodded, looking down at her drink. At first, it was just little things. Getting annoyed when I left lights on, or when I asked him for rides. But then he started snapping over everything. He told me I was too much trouble, that I should grow up and stop expecting people to take care of me. I clenched my fists under the table. That was rich, coming from a man who had stolen my wife and was now living off her without contributing a damn thing. And Mom? I asked. Emma hesitated. She's not the same. She still defends him, even when he treats us like crap. She says he's stressed and that we need to be patient with him. But I can tell she's scared. She doesn't say it, but I see it in her eyes. I exhaled slowly, choosing my next words carefully. Why are you telling me this, Emma? She bit her lip. Because I don't know what to do, she whispered. I thought I was making the right choice by staying with her. I thought you were just being bitter about the divorce. But now I see it. He's not a good person. And I don't think Mom will leave him, no matter how bad it gets. I swallowed the lump in my throat. As much as I wanted to tell her, I told you so, I knew this wasn't the time. She was already struggling with enough guilt. Do you want to come stay with me? I asked carefully. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with uncertainty. I don't know. I nodded, not pushing her. You don't have to decide right now. Just know that my door is always open, no matter what. She nodded slowly, gripping her cup like it was the only thing grounding her. Thanks, Dad. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was getting my daughter back. But I also knew that this wasn't over yet. Because if Nathan was starting to show his true colors, then it was only a matter of time before everything completely fell apart. And when it did, I would be ready. Here's the fourth and final section of your story. It wasn't long before everything came crashing down. A few weeks after my conversation with Emma, I got a frantic call from her in the middle of the night. I barely had time to register her name on my screen before I answered. Dad, can I come over? Her voice was shaky, on the verge of breaking. Of course. What happened? She hesitated. I don't want to talk about it over the phone. Can I just come? I didn't need to hear anything else. I'll be waiting. Come now. 20 minutes later, Emma arrived at my apartment. Her eyes were red, her face pale. She didn't say a word as she stepped inside. I just wrapped my arms around her, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't pull away. We sat on the couch in silence until she finally spoke. They had the worst fight yet, she said softly. Nathan was drunk. Mom confronted him about money again. He lost it, screamed at her, called her useless. He said she was a burden, that he never actually wanted this life, that she ruined everything. I clenched my jaw. Did he hurt her? She shook her head. Not physically. But the things he said, they were worse. He admitted he was seeing someone else, that he had been cheating on her for months. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. I should have been surprised, but I wasn't. Nathan was never the type to be satisfied with what he had. He always needed more. More attention. More validation. More people to manipulate. Emma wiped her eyes. Mom was in shock. She just stood there, not saying anything. And then Nathan laughed. He laughed, Dad. Told her she was pathetic for thinking she was any different from you. That if she could cheat, so could he. The irony was almost poetic. Claire had thrown away our family for this man, and now she was suffering the same fate. But there was no satisfaction in it. Only sadness. Emma sniffled. I tried to stand up for her, but he turned on me, too. Told me I was just some annoying brat that he never wanted in his life. That I was Daddy's little problem now. I felt my stomach twist in anger. That son of a... It doesn't matter, she interrupted, shaking her head. I don't care about him anymore. I just wanted to come here. I didn't want to be in that house. You can stay as long as you need, I assured her. Forever, if that's what you want. She let out a shaky breath, nodding. Thanks, Dad. Over the next few days, Emma stayed with me, slowly starting to heal. Meanwhile, Claire's perfect world completely collapsed. Nathan drained her accounts, took whatever valuables he could, and left her behind like she meant nothing. When she finally reached out to me, it wasn't to apologize, it was to ask for help. I picked up her call, letting her speak. Dan, I don't know what to do, she admitted, her voice hollow. Nathan's gone. He took everything. I have nothing left. I exhaled, gripping my phone tightly. What did you expect? There was silence. Then, a quiet sob. I thought he loved me. I shook my head. Claire, you threw away everything we built for him. You destroyed our family. And now you're realizing he was never worth it. I know I made mistakes, she whispered. I thought maybe you could help me. I scoffed. Help you? After everything you did? I don't have anywhere to go. I closed my eyes for a long moment before responding. That's not my problem, Claire. She let out another sob. What about Emma? She's with me. She's safe. And she's staying here. Claire didn't respond right away. I could hear her crying on the other end, but I didn't feel sympathy. Not anymore. Maybe once upon a time, I would've. But now, all I felt was closure. Goodbye, Claire, I said before hanging up. I turned to Emma, who had been standing nearby, listening. She met my gaze, her expression unreadable. Are you okay? I asked. She took a deep breath and nodded. Yeah, I think I finally am. And for the first time in a long time, so was I.